You have any comment as far as the maps being redrawn that will affect you in your district?
My district looks perfect, but people's districts around me are not perfect. So inevitably, my district will probably change at some point. But I'm not that concerned about my district. We'll just have to see what happens. There's people to the north and west of me that are under. There's people to the east and south of me that are over. So, some things are going to have to be shifted at some point. But
I got you. I mean, I don't think we'll ever. I hope we never have another one like we had back into the Billy McCoy days when the Republicans were beginning to show some strength in numbers. That one was one for the history books, was it not?
That was a little bit before I was up there, but I was, keeping up with that a little bit, and I actually went and sat in some of those debates. It was a hot one.
There were some names. A book ought to be written about that. It really should, because it was most interesting coming down to, was it Mr. Bennett Malone at one point? And it's just a fascinating part of history that we lived through and had the opportunity here on the air to just give it a play-by-play on a daily basis with the movers, shakers, and playmakers. And it was just very, very memorable. Okay, let's talk about this now. You tell me about your bill. Have you officially dropped it? What will it do? And how is it better than the one that is being drafted and rewritten and ultimately will be presented?
Mine has not been dropped yet. The drafters have not put it in my hand. I expect to probably get it Monday. My bill is better because my bill is like at least nine other states that have what they call medical marijuana. My bill requires dispensing by licensed pharmacists. And there's been debate all over social media that, pharmacists they can't dispense. Well, they might not can dispense in a Walgreens, but there are specialty pharmacies in at least 9 states, New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Minnesota, Arkansas, Utah, quite a number of states that require pharmacists to dispense, require them to check the prescription monitoring program for drug interactions, require them to counsel the patient about what they're giving them. Much safer than walking into a weed shop and buying up to the amount and self-medicating and not knowing the interactions with particular drugs that you may be already taking, and especially for a child who is going to be dosed. It's just imminent in my mind that we have a pharmacist involved if we're going to dose children.
I'm looking at how disruptive this would be for the plans of all the people who have financial interest in this, because what you're doing is taking the bricks and mortar out or just relabeling them as specialty pharmacies, and they could continue with their process, but they'd have to get a specialty pharmacist in there to do it. So it's not going to be an easy thing to do.
It's not my problem that people have made premature business investments, and the legislature should not make policy based on protecting somebody's business investment. That's the most asinine thing that you could ever do, is to try to legislate to protect somebody's business investment. And all these libertarians that preach against government protections, they're the number one people that are out there saying, we got to have it this way because, we want this one and that one in the business, and they've already made their plans. Well, you know what? That's about the most hypocritical thing that I could ever see somebody doing. And our job as legislators are to promote public safety and put sound policy out there and not be representing the marijuana industry. We need to be representing the best interests of all the people in the state of Mississippi that will be affected by this program. And that's what I'm attempting to do. And if New York, Connecticut, New Hampshire, and Pennsylvania can require pharmacists to dose this stuff if they want to call it medicine. If we're going to use it as medicine, it needs to be dosed by somebody that's qualified and licensed, and not somebody that's had 21 years old with 8 hours of internet training dosing THC marijuana to minors. That's to me, that is the craziest thing that you could ever do, is let somebody off the street with 8 hours training give this stuff out to children like candy. Yeah.
Well, hopefully not to children, but I guess if they've got a medical marijuana card, they can get it. The kids can, parents can get it for their kids.
Their parent would go pick it up, but it would be dosed for a child.
What worries me more than anything else, Senator, is the interaction of these drugs, and without at least talking with the doctor or the pharmacist. Those two people are highly trained about some interaction with it. You're treating that drug with a pretty potent delivery system into your bloodstream that you could have some problems with it. I mean, people say, well, there's never been an overdose from marijuana. Well, how do you know? And does it really matter if there's an overdose if it's combined with something else?
Well, if you do a little simple Google search and you look at what are coming into the emergency rooms in all the states that have marijuana, there are people that have these vomiting syndrome where they habitual use of marijuana. They vomit every day. That's even mentioned in Alabama's bill that you can't get medical marijuana to try to help the vomiting syndrome that comes from marijuana. I thought it was kind of strange that they actually put that in the bill in Alabama, but they did. You get all kind of different, things that come into the ER from, people taking too much and not following, a prescribed regimen. So, there are problems with it. But my thing is, I would hope that anybody could get anything that relieves some type of medical issue that they have. But if we're going to call it medicine, it needs to be regulated, and it doesn't need to be smoking weed. I mean, and all the discussions that I've seen, that's the number one thing that these marijuana activists, they want to go in and buy whatever, strain of smokable weed that they want. They don't want it to even be considered as medicine. Okay, they want to call it medicine, but they don't want it to be treated like medicine.
Have you run into more people? I think you mentioned this. Have you run into more people who said, my goodness, Angela, I didn't realize this. I thought it was a medical form of marijuana.
All over the state. I have been from Tupelo all the way to the coast. In every place that I have spoken with a crowd of people, they were shocked when I said, yeah, that's raw weed. It's smokable weed. It's not a medicinal form. You can get smokable weed. And they're like, well, we thought it was medical.
You could say it's medical Marlboro. We got a break coming up. You could say it's medical Marlboros, but it's just the same cigarette in the same package.
Exactly.
The other part of this is that on social media they're like fire ants when you bring this up.
Oh, yeah.
They love to talk about the growth of sales in these states, but that as far as they go, as far as statistics in crime, in everything else. So Rex. We'll talk more with Angela Hill coming up next. All right, let me get back. Limited time here, and I want to get back to this on C Spire text line. Illegal sales of cannabis creates crime. Who do you think is selling it? Criminals. Well, that's true. But one of the things people don't want to talk about, Angela Hill is my guest here, is what happens in most states. And again, people who are advocates won't say this, is those who were sold on the medical marijuana push find it's far too expensive. They go in here and all of a sudden their euphoria is dampened when they say, wait a minute, I got to pay for this? Look, and there's it's not covered by insurance. And all the while, those medical marijuana cards, having the legal right to possess the drug, are scouting other sources other than legal pot shops. And it happens. So that's why the black market continues to thrive when people have the legal right to own marijuana, and they're getting it from some illegal places. It's happened in Oklahoma and other places. But your thoughts on that one, Angela?
Well, I think anywhere that you have had legalized marijuana, no matter whether it's recreational or medical, the black market has grown. I mean, California, Oklahoma, Colorado. I mean, all you got to do is Google. It's not me telling you. Get out there and Google. Yep. Take one of your search engines. And one thing I want to mention in my bill, a person that has medical marijuana in their car will have to have it out of the driver's reach, and it will have to be sealed. And the packaging will have to reflect that it is medical marijuana, legal in the state of Mississippi, so that there won't be an enforcement issue with law enforcement out there trying to distinguish between what's legal and what's not legal that somebody has. So we've got to protect the drivers on the road. I didn't see anything that I saw that was any extra measure in the Blackwell draft that I saw. And also, my bill's not going to allow prisoners to sit up in parchment and smoke dope. I mean, that's just all there is to it. If somebody wants medicine and they want a medicinal form of cannabis, that's one thing. But the draft that I saw allowed, if MDOC allowed it, it allowed prisoners to smoke smoke marijuana inside a facility. And I think that's crazy, So there's a lot of things that, just common sense says you don't need to do because, we already have a huge problem inside the correctional system.
I understand. One of the things that is, and people want to argue with me about this one, fine. One of the things that's a little bit, the reason I take this stance on it is because we all said we want a good medical marijuana program in our state, because once you do it, you can't back up.
Exactly.
And for most of us, we see this because we read these stories, and certainly here, you give the legalization of marijuana once it is on the ground and the doors are open. Give it a couple of years of legalization pot in that community or that state. And if you can find one single happy story out of 1,000 of how the drug made that place a better state, a better city, you would be lucky to do that. Most of it's increased crime, increased in everything else that you don't want. So what we asked here was, okay, let's put together a great medical marijuana program just for the patients and not the profit. And consult the business leaders, consult the municipalities, consult the churches, consult the pharmacists, consult the medical association. And I wonder if most of this is done.
Well, look, I have already had people from the medical industry that have read my bill reach out to me and say, Angela, I think this could actually work and not cause us, a nightmare. So I looked at all the states that are not having nightmares with their programs and tried to put the best sections of each law out of those states and combine it into Mississippi's bill. And I kind of did it the same way that I wrote the third grade reading gate, and it's actually working. Mm-hmm. So you take the best things that are already working. You don't reinvent the wheel. You don't cater to the marijuana industry. You look at it from the patient side and from the safety side and from the least disruption to society that you would potentially get from how the policy is written. And as long as you have unlimited licenses and as long as you have unlimited dispensaries and you don't have pharmacists involved and you allow the raw combustible product, you're not going to have a medicinal program. Medicine is medicine. Smoking tar into your lungs. I've never seen anybody say that cigarettes are helpful for you. And if you Google out there, there's stuff in marijuana cigarettes that are bad for your lungs too. So there's other delivery methods to get the same effect, but not the detrimental effects of.
Wait a minute. That's a pretty good. It's a pretty good thing to concentrate on, because one of the reasons that I would say too, if you're terminal, then if you want to smoke it, and there's a private place to do that.
Right.
But if we're moving all the smoking issue over and we're validating because of those people who are terminal, would vaping that be the same thing as far as smoking for those who are terminal?
I think if you look at other states that have had actual medical input, they have metered dose inhalers, and they also have nebulizers, so that just like you take a breathing treatment for asthma or croup or whatever. So those are the medical delivery methods that are superior in the medical in the eyes of the medical people than smoking or vaping.
Listen, I only got a couple of seconds here, but I want to touch base with you because you've been an advocate and a watchdog for CRT, and we brought this up earlier in the week. Your thoughts on that and what went down the last few days as far as the Department of Education?
Well, if people don't think CRT is in the Mississippi schools, then they just need to start calling around and asking these schools, what are you training your teachers on right now? Because I've had employees from schools in the last 2 days contact me and tell me that they are being trained on CRT. The word implicit bias training, the word social justice, the words equity, all those are buzzwords for CRT. And, when you say the words implicit bias, that is saying that your teachers are racist. And that is a textbook definition of critical race theory. And there's implicit bias training going on all over the state of Mississippi.
I was blown away by some of the things that Chad White said during his news conference, and on the video, I should say. And to find that we find on libraries.
Yeah, that was a grant from the Humanities Council to the the Library Commission. the press release said that the Library Commission's staff picked out the books. So what Shad White and I would like to know is who picked out the books, who exactly picked out the books, and why are our tax dollars paying for these, indoctrination? And honestly, they want to call segregation again, is what it looks to me like. They want to separate people and drive a wedge between people. We've come so far in this state that we don't need this divisive stuff, in the schools. There's a difference between teaching the tough history that we have in the past and trying to, blame some kid that shows up in an elementary school for all the evils of the past. That kid can't help what went on in the past. So, that's the idiocy of what you see in critical race theory, that if your skin color is lighter than somebody else's, that you're implicitly biased and inherently racist. And they're training these teachers on it right now.
I don't want to sound like an old fogey, but Joe Friday said, just give me the facts, ma'am. And that's what the teachers ought to be teaching and leave their opinion out of it.
I agree, but there's grants all over the place from the Castle Foundation for Socio-Emotional Learning. I have a video on my Facebook page that the Castle Foundation put out that explains what socio-emotional learning is all about. It's all about CRT and anti-racism, activism, this activist social studies. It's all they're concerned about from the top down is teaching our kids how to be activists. They don't care if they know anything. They want to teach them how to organize and be activists.
That's why I say, Angela, and as a former teacher, you may agree on this one, we need to take a look at our curriculum in the state of Mississippi and find out what needs to be updated for 2022 and beyond and scrap everything else. And I think one of the things that we need to put in there is a course from K through 12. Now, this may sound silly, but if education is to prepare our child to young adults, then this is not crazy. We ought to have a course in there during the K through 12 to show kids how to control their anger and emotions, how to utilize it, and because we got a multitude of stories here, people going to berserk and ruining lives and killing people, and because of their anger. But it's just
that's the total premise. That's what they claim socio-emotional learning is about.
Yeah.
But it's basically a red herring, because what they're teaching these kids are you should be mad at this other person, and we're going to teach you in social studies how to be an activist, and how to get mad and how to go out there and protest. So, they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. You can't have it both ways.
Quickly here, the music is playing. Any other bills that you're going to be dropping lately, soon?
You will see a bill coming from me that's a curriculum transparency bill, and basically prevents and has an enforcement mechanism for schools that continue with CRT.
Okay, and I think we'll have several people doing